Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. This has been a crazy ride because we're not at Radio Row. We are not at the convention. I'm in New York, and so many of our guests are also not in Wisconsin right now for the show. I'm excited about this panel because as we've illustrated at the beginning of the show, the Democratic Party has really lost its way in many forms, become more of the party of, as Thomas Frank just said, more of the party of the elite and Wall Street, shifted away from unions. And I think that a big part of the conversation came out of 2016, and our next three guests have each had a big part of those conversations. Chairman Ray Buckley, who is the chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. He ran for DNC chair, and why I thought he was fascinating is he was on the executive committee of the DNC, and he was the first to illustrate that the Democratic Party had never shown their expenses, their budget, to their executive committee. So just to put that in perspective, that's like saying you have a nonprofit and your board doesn't know what's going on in the nonprofit, and the staff knows what the budget is, but no one else, maybe even the chair of the nonprofit, doesn't know. So Chairman Buckley, thanks for joining us. We also have Selina Vickers, who has been an activist. She was a candidate for Virginia House of Delegates most recently. She was probably, I think, one of the biggest highlighters of the superdelegate issue, because West Virginia, Bernie Sanders won and didn't win the superdelegates. I think it's fair enough to say. And then she went to all these DNC meetings and had her phone out and was taking notes. And, let me just be clear, nobody ever covers some of these meetings. They're really boring. They're in basements. No offense, Ray. But, And David Moore, who's an investigative reporter with Sludge, he's the founder of Sludge. He has done some incredible work on the finances of the DNC and some of the conflicts of interest. So I appreciate you guys holding tight. We've had some technical issues because of COVID, home studios. So my first question is for you, Ray, Chairman Buckley. You're in New Hampshire right now. Let's just start with that. Normally you'd be at the convention, right?
Yeah, this is quite unusual for me. This was supposed to be my 10th convention, so it's very surreal. I feel terrible for all of the young people, the diverse people that we got elected delegates this time. We really made a huge effort to. 40% of our delegates are under the age of 40, and the majority of our delegates are diverse in some way or another. We just hit a home run, and then they get robbed of the opportunity. So we're working really hard to try to make the week special, but it really is. It's tough on them because a lot of them worked really hard campaigning and getting the votes, people to show up and vote for them. But yes, I am home, sitting in my dining room. This is the set that I've created to run the morning caucuses from, so you can kind of see a lot of New Hampshire focus on it, just because I want to give those delegates some sense of what it was like. And we tell little stories about past conventions and funny things that happened, stuff like that, just to kind of get them.
There's always these moments. I've been pulling out all of my lanyards. I don't want to lift them up again because it's a mess. They're all connected. So Chairman Buckley, when you ran for DNC chair, you were on the executive committee, which maybe you want to explain a little bit about what the executive committee is, but also you highlighted how the finances of the Democratic Party had never been presented to the, not the whole membership, of course, not the whole body, but the group that really should have some sort of oversight and is guiding where the party goes, where they invest their money. And part of the reason you highlighted is there was all this money being thrown around in 2016 and before, and over 1,000 losses from the Obama era. So, I mean, can you talk a little bit about what it was like being on the executive committee and these finances?
Well, I was first elected to the executive committee in 2001. So I've now been on there for 19 years. And when I ran for it, I thought, oh, wow, how my grandparents would have been so proud. Here I am sitting next to, Franklin Roosevelt's grandson and, other important people that
Jim Roosevelt, who's in the news right now.
Yeah. And then I realized that we really aren't asked anything or told anything. And each person who got elected chair said they were going to change things. Then they got caught up into the Beltway machine. And while they might have had good intentions, It just never has never happened. It's just really been very difficult. So that's why I, ran for chair, not thinking I probably was going to win, but I wanted to be able to push forward because it wasn't just superdelegates. Superdelegates was one of like 40 really egregious things that should have been addressed, and some of them have been. And so we are moving forward, but we still have a long way to go to really reform. As I talked with you forever, there is a grip on the Democratic National Party by this consultant and corporate groups of people that are making millions of dollars, just millions of dollars off from campaigns. And so and these consultants make money when they do advertising because they get a kickback of between 8 and 10%. There's no kickback for hiring a community organizer. And that's where we should have been investing money over the years. Now, I have to be honest, Tom Perez has done it. He actually has invested money in the party. We did very well here in New Hampshire in 2018. We won everything except for the governor's race, and that was very close. And the DNC was the largest investor in our court.
Is that the money? I'm going to be a little tough on here, and I understand you're the chair, so you're in a position like that's wonderful. It's really made your party thrive, but this is like anti-Trump, movement. I mean, there's a lot happening here where people are turning out, and obviously with mail-in ballots, you're seeing voter turnout increase. But the level of money needed to build a party, is it enough to have a thriving party? And David, feel free to kick in because I know you've been doing a lot of the reporting on some of the finances too. Are you seeing the type of money you need to build a thriving party that recruits candidates from the bottom up?
No.
Good enough. All right, David, you've been following the money. How is it looking right now in terms of the DNC? Like, what the funders of the DNC? David's been going through these committees, and when we talk about the committees, the top of the show I highlighted, there's like the executive committee, there's the rules committee, there's the platform committee outside of the convention platform and rules committee. But he's done the real work in researching who's on these rules committees that are appointed, not elected, as Chairman Buckley just mentioned. So, David, can you highlight some of these folks?
Sure. So here's some of what's happening in the lead up to the convention this week. On Sledge, we've been doing a reporting series on the DNC members, who they are, because the DNC does not publish this information on their website. It's not under the Who We Are section, and you can't see who the individual members of the different committees are. We've obtained a list from a DNC member, and we've been going through and highlighting the members who have different kinds of potential conflicts of interest, or what would be called conflicts of interest in other sorts of private companies based on their experience with corporate lobbying, or who are corporate lawyers and more. So everyone knows that every 4 years and there's the convention, and in the lead up to the convention, there's committees that are gathered, and they're primarily comprised of nominees from the winner of the presidential nominee. So of course this year it's the presumptive nominee, Vice President Biden's political operation. And they do things like draft the proposed platform that'll be voted on and presumably adopted this year, and more. But there was also the negotiated agreement in late April with the Sanders campaign that ensured that more progressives and delegates from the Sanders campaign would have representation on the committees and would be able to participate. So the committee meetings happened in late July, and they happened through virtual meetings. And there was some amount of contest around the agenda and the procedure of these meetings. And the one that I'll highlight here most is that in the meeting of the Convention Rules Committee, which happened on July 30th, a Sanders delegate named Brent Welder from the Kansas City area proposed an amendment that would have banned corporate lobbyists from serving on the DNC, and then also would have permanently banned the DNC from accepting corporate PAC money, because right now that's not enshrined in the charter. In short, after a very convoluted process where the amendment was first tabled without a vote, there was a back channel process involving the Sanders campaign and the Biden campaign. And with minutes left to go in the meeting, it was brought to a full vote where it was voted down 2-1. The final on that was 105-45 with 8 abstentions. And on Sludge, in our DNC series, we've reported on the members who have backgrounds in corporate lobbying or work as corporate consultants who voted against being able for corporate lobbyists to be able to continue to serve as voting DNC members Of the approximately 105 votes, we identified at least 24 or 25 figures with corporate background and influence. And some of them go back to the history of big money fundraising that's really taken over the party under the chairpersonship of Tom Perez recently.
Selina, you have been an active, I guess, a presence in the Democratic Party's committee meetings. And so a lot of these committee meetings that happen throughout the year are done, I don't want to say in secrecy, because they do, last minute the DNC staff will send out a press release, and then the press will suddenly have to jump on a plane the next day to go to this meeting. But you've been doing this on your own. And in a sense, you're an investigative reporter, an independent reporter, if I could put that on you, because you do show up and you ask the tough questions. But this all started with superdelegates for you, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about your background, how you came about doing this?
Yes. So I'm from West Virginia, and Bernie Sanders was incredibly popular in the 2015, 2016. And I mean, really incredible. I mean, and people think of West Virginia as being a red state, but there actually is a very strong progressive movement, or just a people's movement, and strong labor movement, and a strong environmental group movement, but you can't get anywhere because of the very, very strong hold that fossil fuels have over both parties. There's basically one party in West Virginia, it's the fossil fuel party, and there's kind of two factions. So Bernie Sanders won all 55 counties in West Virginia in the Democratic primary. And when we went, I was a delegate for him when we went to the convention, we had 8 superdelegates, and all 8 superdelegates lined up. I mean, like, completely ignored the fact that Hillary Clinton only won 36% of the vote of the entire state. Bernie won every single county, and all 8 superdelegates said, "Screw you all. We really do not care what you think." And they all voted for Clinton. And so Clinton won. And no disrespect to Clinton, because I know there are Clinton fans out there, but I'm telling you, when an entire state goes for a candidate, and the people, your Democratic leaders have that much gall to say, "Screw you, we're going to go the other direction." What that did was just completely told every Democrat who followed the party and was interested, your leadership does not care what you think. I mean, it was very, very clear. And when I, learned about the Unity Forum Commission, which you were on, I didn't know about the meetings because, as you say, I mean, you have to really, really dig to know. And I found out on a Sunday that the Unity Forum Commission, the third meeting, was meeting in Chicago on Thursday. And so I went. I made up this little flyer, and I went, and I I wanted to speak. Jenna O'Malley Dillon wouldn't let me speak.
She's now the campaign manager.
I know exactly who she is. Yeah, she's the star of the Biden campaign. But yeah, I mean, I just went, and I wanted people to know, and I was very naive. I thought that I could go and explain what happened. So it's not just the superdelegate issue. I mean, that told people, stay home. We don't care about what you think. And so when people didn't come out for the general election, because they were so like, why vote? Because we voted and our vote didn't count. And so what happened was the down ballot effect of that was horrendous. I mean, we lost when we lost the Senate, we lost the House, we got a Democrat elected for governor, who then changed to Republican 9 months later at a Trump rally. I mean, that's the kind of Democrat that the Democrats support, the Democratic establishment supported. And so, I mean, what that means in terms of policy is, people's lands are being taken for the fracking industry. We have poor water. We have, the school situation is horrendous. I mean, that's what I really care about, is how people on top making decisions have this incredible negative down ballot effect. And we have to change all that.
So I'm going to ask this question to the whole group here. Whether or not, if Joe Biden is elected, suddenly the party becomes Joe Biden's party. If Joe Biden is not elected, we may be in a situation like we were in 2017, in which there is another chair election. There's an opportunity to an election, essentially, for the chair and the future of the party. But let's start with, if Joe Biden's elected, is there an opportunity for reform by progressives? Let's go around the circle. I'll start with David.
One initial view on that process is something that you've identified really well in your coverage, which is that the chairperson of the DNC has a tremendous amount of control over the work of the committees. And the committees in turn can extend to even the credentials committee, which is the definition of who qualifies to be a DNC member. In a similar way, if the rules committee adopted a rule that prevented corporate lobbyists from serving on the DNC and advancing the interests of the pharmaceutical industry or the health insurance industry or the fossil fuel industry, then it is likely that the majority of DNC members would vote to affirm that rule. And then there would be more basic grounding of the kind of ethics policies in place that government ethics experts say that you see in other kinds of, whether it's a private company or a public corporation or other nonprofit corporations, there would be a sort of conflict of interest policy that could move forward. So I think if members were to advance through their state parties a request for more of the committees to operate independently, and I'm sure that's something that Chair Buckley has insight on.
Raymond Buckley?
What happens is that we get an email the night before the inauguration, the members of the DNC, saying that the president recommends the following people for chair, for the 5 vice chair positions, for secretary, for treasurer, and finance council. Oftentimes the incumbents, if they're being replaced, get a call that night at the inaugural ball that tomorrow they're being replaced. So it is a process that has been it has been attempted to test that, but at the end of the day, the fact that you just reelected or elected a president, the euphoria, nobody wants to rock the boat, and they get accepted. The reality is that immediately the DNC becomes the reelection campaign in waiting, and so there's not going to be a lot of thought given to the structure of the party. I think that we can continue to move forward. I have to admit, I during the 8 years that I was one of the vice chairs, I did have one-on-one conversations with Joe Biden. I think that he has a better understanding and appreciation of grassroots organizing than some of the folks that came out of Illinois, where there isn't a structured party. And we talked a long time about that. So I think there's a possibility of moving forward to investing more in the grassroots. Some of the other larger DC structural changes that need to happen, I'm not convinced. I'm going to fight the fight, but I'm not convinced that they would be terribly successful. Now, God forbid, we're not successful in November. That's when people need to put their personalities and their favorites or whatever aside and say, okay, we all have to work together to get a chair and not be divided up 16 ways to Sunday, which is how Tom Perez was able to be successful last time by having so many people running. It was a historic number of people running. You know, as you know, I withdrew in the closing weeks and endorsed Keith. But the state party chairs and vice chairs and the DNC members were all split up. They were not unified like we were when we put in Howard Dean in 2005. And so I spoke very passionately, in my opinion, to the State Chairs Association the other day on our call, that I begged them not to make any commitments. I said, I don't care if it's your governor or your U.S. senator or your very best friend or your spouse that says they want to be DNC chair. Do not make a commitment. Don't make any commitments to anybody. We need to do this together, because if we stand together, we can move forward. There's a significant change in state parties where there has been great success in bringing in some reform and progressive chairs and vice chairs. and National Committee members as well. So I think that we have a larger number than we had 4 years ago. And but I'm praying that everyone understands that the greater is more important than the me, and that everyone understands that we need to come together and pull that off. That's when we can go back to my litany of 32 reforms, hopefully, and really talk about that. But the important thing, as David said, the chair appoints the Rules Committee, which is why I'm not on the Rules Committee any longer. But it was the same. It's the same sort of people that get appointed at large, then get appointed to these committees. And the Rules Committee really, for all intents and purposes, is the real executive committee, where they really have this sort of in-depth conversations. Yeah. And so, you look at the membership, and there are a lot of significant DC insiders in there. So it really would take a Herculean effort to do this. I'm not willing to give up. I think that the party is worth saving, because I think that our future, because of the diversity, the demographic changes within our party, that we are going to have in the next 20 plus years, a huge change in who makes up the leadership. We have a lot of rising stars, a lot of people that are moving up in the pipeline in our local committees, our county committees, and even our state parties that will be moving up to national leadership positions. Look at all these great victories that we're having in the primaries in Congress, and I'm hoping that that when we hold on the majority, that there'll be even more in there when they get sworn in. So I have great hope, but I want to be realistic too.
Selina, what are your thoughts from the activist perspective on the ground?
Okay, well, I think that, there is a path to reforming the Democratic Party, but it's not going to happen with whoever is the next president. I think it's too soon. You can put pressure on them and that sort of thing. The pressure from the Unity Reform Commission and that report and all the all the grassroots behind that. You got a little bit, but you didn't even get it forever. It's just like, it wasn't it was a major change.
Meaning it expired at the next convention.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe it'll go into the next call. I don't know. But the way that we change, and this is I've been sort of started at the very, very beginning and kind of worked my way through. And what I believe the path to party reform is through the state parties. And of course, you have to work on the county level and whatsoever. But people need to understand that the DNC is made up of at least two, your chair and vice chair, and at least one Democratic man, one Democratic woman, and maybe more depending on how large a state is. But the vast majority of the people who are on the DNC are on their state executive committee, and that is made up from us. And so, a lot of people get pissed off and want to dim exit. But in my opinion, that's the worst thing that we can do, because this is a two-party system, whether we like it or not. Party politics are one step away from government. And if we want to have a government that we can be proud of, we have to be involved. Democrats need to reform their party. Republicans need to reform their party. And there were several things that Thomas Frank and that David Moore mentioned that I reached over and grabbed my copy of the Democratic Charter. And listen to this. Yeah, listen to this. This is in the preamble of the Democratic Charter and has been since the original charter in 1974. A political party which wishes to lead must listen to those that it would lead. A party which asks for the people's trust must prove that it trusts the people. Now that's incredible, and we don't hold them accountable to this. And there's an enormous amount of things that are in this charter that I just really learned in the last year and a half that there are rights that we have as Democrats that we don't know about. Mr. Moore was saying a minute ago that he couldn't find out the people on the standing committee for a convention for rules. I mean, in the bylaws, there's a whole section on participation of all party affairs. And it says that we have the right to know when meetings are. We have a right to be able in the party policy, to participate in party policy and where rules are formulated. How could I participate in how rules are formulated if I don't know who's on the rules committee? If I can't go to a website and see, my state doesn't even, I mean, I happen to know it because I, follow all that stuff. But if I was a regular person and I went to my website, my party website, I wouldn't know who was on the rules committee or who was on the platform committee. You know what I mean? But I sure as heck get information when they need a donation about something. You know what I mean? It's not that they don't have my information. They have my information. They choose not to inform me. And until we elect people to our state party that are going to then, I mean, that's the first thing. We have to get people in our state party that are going to follow the rules, allow people to fully participate, and then get those people into the DNC. And that's going to take a process, and it's not fun. And you go to meetings and you have people look at you and say bad things about, get accused of really horrendous things. You're trying to destroy the Democratic Party because you ask them to follow their own rules. So nothing's going to change in January, I don't think. I mean, and there might be these incremental changes, but the major change comes when we really heavily dim enter and take over the party.
Thank you all. I couldn't agree more. I think it's a very wonky conversation. I'm sitting here with the rules too, because I was like, listen, if you guys want to talk about the DNC, let's talk about the DNC. So this week we're talking about the DNC, but it's extremely wonky and it's rooted. But I mean, ultimately, I mean, there's a reason why I thought you guys would be a great match. It's rooted in money. It's rooted in how the committees work. It's rooted in democracy. It's rooted in how the state parties function, because ultimately the DNC is, for the most part, not entirely, a membership-based organization. And depending on how your state works your membership and how you can get elected is how the Democratic Party functions. And I'm glad that, Selina, you said it's a two-party system right now, and it's what we're working with. But I think, the big question is it in time? Is it in time to fight off climate change? Is it enough to fight off Trump and fascism? Is it in time to deal with, the existential crises that so many communities, Black and brown communities in particular, are facing? And I think, we always have to root it back in those issues. But I want to thank you all for joining our first DNC show. And hopefully we'll have you back on very soon. And just thank you for all of your work and your commitment, and good luck this week, Chairman Buckley in particular.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nomiki.
Thank you.
So, how do we manage this? There we go. Zoom. So, we are going a little over, as you guys, those of you who stuck around, thank you so much. And thank you to those of you on Super Chat, S. Blackmore, Tico, Todd, and I apologize, I don't have my glasses on, Cody, Art, always there, the Ufio Answer, and Chutur Landlord. I hope I said that right. Thank you for your love for the show. I am very excited about tomorrow's show. We have on tomorrow a very exciting show. We have John Nichols, who's going to talk about the fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. That's his new book, about an old fight, in particular with Henry Wallace at the convention, in which FDR took off Wallace off his ticket and was replaced by Harry Truman. And then Wallace went on to run as a third-party candidate. So great questions for this time. And then later we have talk about, it's DNC time, so we're going to go all in for the DNC. We have Larry Cohen, who is a friend of the show, and he's the chair of Our Revolution. He was also the former president of the Communication Workers of America and International. And we have Brent Wilder, we just talked about him a second ago. He had brought up some key issues on the Rules Committee. I was going to talk about that. And Jane Klebb, who is the chair of the Nebraska State Democratic Party. But first, and look at Chairman Buckley's clapping. It's your friends. It's your friends. I also served on the Unity Reform Commission with them. But first, if you are not already a member on Patreon, please join us at patreon.com/The Nomiki Show, and make sure to click like and subscribe. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a teaser, so you tune in every day at 3 p.m. this week. Are you ready? I'm just going to throw out some names. this week, I'm not going to tell you what days, it's going to be a surprise. This week, we are going to have Bhaskar Sankara from Jacobin, Matt Stoller, Francesca Fiorentini, Nabila Islam, who ran for Congress in Georgia, Harvey K., of course, expert on FDR, Nabila Islam, I already said her, Jim Zogby, who is a former executive committee member of the DNC. We know him as well. He was the former chair of the Sanders Institute, and you may know Noam Chomsky. He will be joining us. You just have to figure out what day. I'm not going to tell you. So you have to click subscribe and you'll be surprised. And then we have a whole lot of other guests that are going to be joining, talking about the current state of the Democratic Party, what's happening at the conventions, how progressives organize despite whatever happens, and what it means for the progressive movement to have Joe Biden or Donald Trump in the presidency. I will see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Hopefully we'll have all the tech glitches sorted out by then. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Dorsey, who's been sitting here. Kyle. Thank you to our team. Ruthie. Thank you to Kelly and George. And, of course, to David Moore, Raymond Buckley, Chairman Buckley, Selina Vickers, and Thomas Frank. See you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.